So, it's
He knows his shit, pop up.
that Konami doesn't know what to do with Dark Magician.
Nah.
Every single time we get a new card, there's always a blaring issue with it. Always something ass backwards with it, or it has no synergy at all with the rest of the cards they gave us. I'm gonna fix all of our problems right now. Yeah, in this video series, I'll be fixing every single Dark Magician card we've ever gotten. I won't be making new cards, that'd make things too easy. Instead, I'll make it so that every card still does what it's supposed to do, just in a way that makes it accomplish its goal better. Let's get started. The first card we're going to take a look at is Thousand Knives. If you control Dark Magician, target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target. Definitely one of those cards that wasn't even good when it first came out. Here's how I would fix it while still keeping true to its effects. If you control Dark Magician, target cards on the field up to the number of monsters named Dark Magician on your side of the field and in your graveyard. Destroy those targets. If you summon Dark Magician to your side of the field while this card is in your graveyard, you can discard one card to add this card to your hand. You can only use each effect Thousand Knives once per turn. A better effect and the name Thousand Knives makes more sense now. While it's still a brick of a card, I feel this way it has enough utility that it may be a one-of in some competitive Dark Magician decks. And if you draw it and don't need it, you can at least pitch it with souls or something else, and then it'll add itself back to your hand whenever you do need it. There's a lot of interesting plays you can do with that discard effect. Soul Servant. This is one of the very few cards that's pretty much perfect as it is. It has one pretty big flaw, but the rest of the card makes it worth it, so I wouldn't even fix the issue it does have. But I would add 1.5 more things to it to make it slightly more flexible and better fit in with the rest of the fixed cards. Since my version of the card is almost the same thing, I won't be reading the original, we'll just get to the new one and I'll point out the differences. Place one card on top of the deck from your hand, deck, field, or graveyard. That is Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl, or Magician of Black Chaos, or that mentions any of them, except Soul Servant. During your main phase, you can banish this card from your graveyard, draw cards equal to the number of Palladium monsters, Dark Magician, Magician of Black Chaos, and or Dark Magician Girl with different names on the field and in the graveyards. You can only use this effect of Soul Servant once per turn. As you can see, I've made a few minor changes, but they can actually make a pretty big difference. Let's get to the most obvious one. I've added Magician of Black Chaos to the list of monsters. Not surprising to those of you who've watched my older videos, this gives us a few more search options and potentially one more draw. I've also added the field to one of the locations that we can put a card from to the top of the deck. At first, it seems like a completely useless add-on, but it actually gives us quite a bit of utility. I'll give a little example here. Let's say one of your cards is being targeted by your opponent and is trying to banish it. You can then chain this card to dodge it and place it back on top of the deck where you'll be able to draw said card and activate it or summon it again. Secrets of Dark Magic. Activate one of the following effects. Fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field, including Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl as fusion material. Ritual summon one ritual monster from your hand by tributing monsters from your hand or field, including Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl whose total levels equal to or exceed the level of the ritual monster. This card is essentially just a generic fusion and ritual spell. The only good things about it is that it's both, and it's a quick play. But considering traditional fusion and ritual summoning like this takes a lot of investment when compared to every other type of summoning mechanic, being both is simply not enough. Being together doesn't cover any weaknesses of either mechanic. It doesn't synergize or do anything useful. You're essentially just making a pigeon rat. Before I get to the fixed card though, I know you're all expecting an effect like Red Ice Fusion. This is not that card. This card is meant to fusion or ritual summon. We're gonna stick to that. Don't worry though, we do have a Red Ice Fusion-esque card coming up later. Anyway, with all that aside, this is what I did to the card. This card is always treated as a fusion and ritual spell. Activate one of the following effects. Fusion summon one fusion monster from your extra deck or your graveyard using monsters from your hand or field, including Dark Magician, Dark Magician Girl, or Magician of Black Chaos as fusion material. You can then add to your hand one of the monsters that was used as fusion material. Ritual summon one ritual monster from your hand or graveyard by tributing monsters from your hand or field, including Dark Magician Girl, or Magician of Black Chaos, whose total levels equal to or exceed the level of the ritual monster. You can then add to your hand one ritual monster from your deck or graveyard. Now that's how you do it. You still have to fusion and ritual summon in the traditional way since that's what the card was going for, but you're also able to summon the monsters from the grave, and you get rewarded for summoning afterwards too, replacing one of the resources you used, so now it's not so costly. Imagine fusion summoning using Illusion of Chaos or Timaeus the United Dragon, then adding that card back to your hand so you can use its effect for later or for something else right after. Or imagine ritual summoning Magician of Chaos, then you get to add either Chaos Max monsters to your hand. Oh yeah, it's also always treated as a ritual and fusion spell, so that means things like Preparation of Rites or Verte Anaconda would support it as well. If it wasn't banned, but you get what I'm saying. Eye of Timaeus. I know this is the card most of you were waiting for. I'm just gonna skip to the fixed version because I don't even need to say anything about this one. Y'all already know. This card is also always treated as Legendary Dragon Timaeus. Fusion summon one fusion monster that lists a Dark Magician monster as fusion material from your extra deck, using monsters from your hand, deck, or field as fusion material. If you use Dark Magician or Dark Magician Girl from your field as material, you can ignore the remaining fusion materials required for that fusion summon. You cannot summon other monsters the turn you activate this card, except for monsters that are named or mention Dark Magician. Searchable, does everything it used to, and more. We can bring out Dragoon by fusing Dark Magician and Red Eyes Black Dragon directly from the deck. And if we use Dark Magician from the field, we don't even need to use Red Eyes at all, just like the original one. And there's another reason not listed on the card that benefits us from using Dark Magician or the Girl from the field. From my understanding, fusion monsters with generic materials cannot be fusion summoned by using generic materials from the deck. What I mean by this is, Dark Magician the Dragonite, for example, requires Dark Magician and a dragon to be fused. Due to rulings, we can't just send any dragon as fusion material from the deck. So to bring out Dark Magician the Dragonite, we actually still need to use the Dark Magician on the field. So for that monster specifically, and others like it, we still need to use Eye of Timaeus the same way as the original. But it's searchable, and we can still bring out fusion monsters that use specific materials from the deck, like Red Eyes Dark Dragoon. Keeping the text that reads a Dark Magician monster also makes it future-proof in case if another Dark Magician monster comes out that has its own fusion. The only downside is that now it limits our summoning, but I think this is a fair trade considering we now have our own version of Red Eyes Fusion and a searchable Eye of Timaeus, all in one.